You're listening to Big World Network.
The Shielding of Mortimer Towns. Written and read by Montgomery Thompson. Episode 1. Purple light made the steam glow, drifting sluggishly in the hot air as the entrepreneur's claws wrapped around his cool beverage. He brushed aside the little umbrella, his flicking tongue searching for the straw. Languishing in a hammock next to him was a 5-foot-long slug, 2 shiny black orbs perched on wobbly stalks and adorned with a thin strip of hair that passed his eyebrows, scowled in disagreement. It was a relationship almost as old as microbial life, lawyer and client consulting in the security of a private sauna. "No," the slug drawled. "What do you mean, no?" His client, Satasti, flicked his tongue in irritation. He didn't care for the word no. "There's no way, Satasti. The law is clear. You can't develop any planet inhabited by intelligent life." The bulk of the lawyer's slugness shifted in the hammock, leaving a disturbing grill-like pattern on his gelatinous skin. "Drom, you know as well as I do that those primitives on Thune are nowhere near intelligent. Besides, none of the locals even know they have company. Satasti, I'm tired of this. Just because you stumble upon an uncharted planet doesn't mean you get to enslave the natives. It's just not cost-effective." "You're right on that," he slurped from his umbrella drink. "The fines alone would put me out of business. Come on, you're my attorney. Don't you know any loopholes?" "No, Satasti, the only way you're going to make a claim on that planet is if the inhabitants disappear, and that's impossible, so just forget it." Satasti stood and began to pace. The 7.5-foot-tall reptile scratched his scaly head and thought. Thune was his ticket to the big leagues. He had found it and named it. By rights, it was his, but he wasn't allowed to touch it. "I don't like the concept of impossible, Drom. We're talking about an entire planet here. If I can work that claim, you and me will be rich beyond our wildest dreams. Think about it. Your own private jungle, salt-free. I might be able to even buy you a consulate seat." Satasti leaned in close to the lawyer. "Imagine the look on Judge Blark's face. You taking your seat as an esteemed member of the Galactic Council." "Ooh, Blark, that dashcack. Putting his face in it would be worth a planet." The giant slug rippled with fury. "That's what I'm talking about. Come on, Drom. An entire resource-rich planet is ours for the taking. The only thing that stands between us and our destiny is a few pesky natives." Drom deflated. "But it's an impossible obstacle. If you touch them, and I mean if they even see you, the Galactic Council will lock you away. Section 10 lays it out as clear as drool." Drom cleared his throat. "And I paraphrase. There is only one instance where a non-native is even allowed on an undeveloped planet, and that would be to protect the natives from deliberate harm by a non-native intelligence. Even then, you're not allowed to be detected by the natives. Oh, and here's the important part, Satasti, upon penalty of life imprisonment." But Satasti wasn't listening. He was staring at a faraway place, his synapses firing like bubbles in a boiling pot of oatmeal. He whirled around and looked at Drom, wild-eyed and salivating. He had an idea. A toothy grin broadened on his face, and he raised himself up and waggled a stubby finger. "There's one thing I've learned, Drom, my old friend. Impossible is the only thing that's impossible. If I can't enslave the primitives, I'll get rid of them. Or..." From the bubbling oatmeal of his brain, another idea surfaced. "Better yet, I'll make it so they get rid of themselves. Remember that guy we hired to take care of those protesters?" "You mean the guy I hired for you?" "Yeah, his name is Ilgut." "He really made a mess of those punks. I can't believe he didn't get caught." "Ilgut. Right. Find him and tell him we've got another job for him. And tell him to pack for a short jump across the sector." Across the galactic sector on a planet with 2 moons called Thune, in the country of Fremia, in the province of Rukshit, in the county of Vangs, in a little town called Lagley that looked remarkably similar to a small 1960s English village, but wasn't. A little girl named Maxie tried to shove her head into a street drain. "Did you see that?" She pushed and kicked as water cascaded around her head. On the street, her older sister Shaylee pulled her on her feet to keep her from falling in. Are you crazy? You can't go in there. Maxie, stop it, I swear. I'll tell Mom. It was a huge snake, man. He had a pack-sack on with a big gun. He went that way through the sewer. Their older brother Spence had been sent to round them up for dinner. The rain began to fall heavier, pelting them with large drops as the dusk receded into evening. You dapes, it's getting dark and we're getting soaked. Get out of there and come home now. Maxie gave just one last push to try and fit into the drain, but it was no use. Whatever she had seen was long gone. She sat up. Her dark hair was dripping wet and covered in leaves and dirt. You saw him, didn't you? She asked her siblings. Spence just rolled his eyes. There was nothing to see, Maxie. Just you trying to drown yourself. Mom's going to ground you for a year. Shaylee picked her bike up from the pavement. He was real. I saw him. Look at me. He was black and green and kind of yellow all over and had a pack-sack on his back. And yeah, with a big gun. We know, Maxie. You told us already. Spence stood her up and flopped her hood over her head. Now let's go. Maxie stomped back home, following her brother. The snake man was real. She'd seen it. Mom would be mad that she was crawling in the mud and water, but when she heard about the incredible thing Maxie had seen, she couldn't stay mad for long. Maxie marched on behind Spence and Shaylee, her face set in scowling determination. Mim stood in the open door of her small council house and stared out into the rain. Out on the street, her 3 children walked towards the house. What are you doing? Hurry up, you're getting soaked, she yelled. The kids picked up speed and burst through the door in a tumble of wet raincoats and shoes. Maxie, what are you doing out there in the pouring rain? Mim scolded. You'll catch cold, and you know we can't afford a doctor right now. Spence pulled off his overcoat. She had a raincoat on, Mom. The 15-year-old dropped his soaking coat on the floor and stomped off to the kitchen. Mom, Maxie was trying to climb into the sewer. Shaylee! Maxie turned red at her sister's betrayal. She should have known. Shaylee was such a tattler. But I told her not to, and Spence was telling her that she should, and... That's enough, Shaylee. Mim put her finger to Shaylee's lips. I've told you before, no one likes a tattletale. But Mom... Enough, Shaylee. You should have been helping Spence get Maxie back inside. You're supposed to be looking out for her. Now, to the kitchen. Go. Shaylee rolled her eyes and plodded off to the kitchen while Mim picked Spence's coat up off the floor. Maxie, what were you thinking, trying to climb into the sewer? Mim asked. Maxie stuck her tongue out at the back of her 12-year-old sister as she tugged her coat off. I saw a big slimy snake man, but when he saw me, he swam away. A big snake, huh? You didn't ask his name? Mom, I'm serious. Maxie's face screwed up in frustration. He had a big pack-sack on his back and there's a gun sticking out of it. All right. Maybe you can draw a picture of him for me after dinner. Now dry off and get to the table. Mim sighed. Maxie was 10 and, much to Mim's distress, seemed to have no fear of anything. She hung up the coats and followed her children into the kitchen as evening settled over Lakely. Relieved that the youngling was gone, Ilgut pushed his large snake-like body through the pipe with a low grunt as he made his way through the sludge to the edge of town. The lawyer, Drom, had promised an easy job, but nothing was ever easy when he worked with that dashcack. He'd been grunting his way through the sewer since he arrived on this backwards planet. After narrowly dodging the interests of that overly inquisitive young native, he had pushed through the pipes for another half an hour, until finally he peered out through the drain through a small black scope and looked across a large field surrounded by woods on 3 sides. A small brick farmhouse stood just off the road, and he could see 2 natives inside, both elderly. Perfect. Gray light dimmed in the evening sky. It would be fully dark soon. Ilgut slid back down into the muck and waited. Inside the sturdy farmhouse, an old farmer and his wife settled in for an evening in front of the telly, as they did most evenings. Mortimer's enduring frame creaked as he bent to fidget with the antenna on the television. Nearly deaf and mostly blind, he struggled to get a clear signal, which seemed to stubbornly evade his efforts. But the old, thin man persevered. Finally, he straightened and returned to his faded armchair, satisfied with the picture. His wife, Aga, equally as impaired as Mortimer, carefully brought in their evening meal as she always did. Mortimer lovingly took the meal from her, and when she had settled into her seat, said a prayer of thanks. On the TV, the news anchor intoned soberly, "The top story tonight. The Freemian Leadership Council votes 50-2 in favor of trade sanctions against Olred in response to allegations of spying. The allegations rose from what Olred claims was unauthorized aerial activity in restricted Olred airspace. Fremen military officials maintained that although they confirmed that they also detected the activity in all red airspace, it was in the outer atmosphere and too high for any Fremen planes to operate. We go now to our aeronautical correspondent for more. Mortimer reached over and touched his wife's hand. Outside the humble farmhouse, at the edge of the field, the birds stirred in their sleep. Namarin Road ran past the town's farm and ventured further out into Vangs County. The only car on it that evening belonged to Sergeant Bemis, the head of Legley's two-man police force. He told his wife that he had taken on the added responsibility of the evening patrol because it was what a good leader did. In reality, it was an excuse to wait for his wife to go to bed. If he showed up at home before then, the woman would drown him in an unfordable river of babble. It would start as a trickle, with the women at the salon, then turn into a stream of talk about who died recently or who wore what at bingo night. Soon the stream would merge into a river, as she went through every inhabitant of Legley, their questionable lifestyles and likely misdeeds. The river would swell into a flood as she assigned him police duties to spy on the rumored offenders. She might even try to get him to arrest people in their homes. The woman wasn't right in the head. No, he shuddered, it was best to stay on patrol. He shifted his police cap on his head and made his way back into town, happy to have an excuse not to be home. As the old police cruiser ambled towards the town center, he didn't notice the large uncoiling shape rising in the darkness behind him. Ilgut let the rain wash the sewage off him as he stared after the police car. Primitives, he snorted, and then slithered off the road and across the lawn of the farmhouse. His eyes pierced the dark as he scanned for native animals, but there were only grazers out in the field. Silently, he coiled next to the window of the house. Inside, he could see Mortimer and his wife watching television. Black and white. What a loser. This guy is definitely my target. His biological combat implant scanned and then locked onto the old man. Once a target was locked, it could go anywhere in the galactic sector and the assassin would be able to locate it. Ilgut crept into the woods at the edge of the farm to wait until daybreak. He needed witnesses when the old guy snuffed it. You've been listening to The Shielding of Mortimer Towns, written and read by Montgomery Thompson, presented by Big World Network. Tune in for further episodes at www.bigworldnetwork.com.
You're listening to Big World Network.